For me, I really like it when someone is prepared, they've done their research, they know what they're doing, they've done it before, this is not their first rodeo, and it makes me feel taken care of. And that's what you want to do for your guests so that it is a very smooth process.
Welcome to the Soundboard with Tofe podcast. To the industry leaders and forward-thinking companies, this is your resource to become a better podcaster. You'll be taken on a journey to learn tips and tricks around podcast strategy, editing, and curation. And here's your host, Tofe Evans.
Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the Soundboard with Tofe podcast. I'm your host, Tofe Evans, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about the 3 mistakes to avoid that people make with their podcast. So today, there's a fair bit to unpack, so I'm just going to go straight into it. So the first mistake that people make with having their podcast is not having a microphone. A microphone makes a massive difference because if the audio quality isn't there, it will turn people off. Now, when I talk about microphones, people may think, oh, I can just use my computer mic, I can just use my phone, I can just use a crappy set of headphones that has that microphone port in there. No, you want to order a decent quality microphone. And they're not super expensive. You can get one for, $150 for a decent quality mic. You can have a Blue Yeti, like I've got this one, and then they can get up to about $250, $300 for a Rode NTUSB mic, and then leading into the $500 plus for like a nice Shure mic. So be sure to invest in a good quality mic. I will list 3 in the show notes for you to pick and choose from if you're looking to invest in a new one. The second mistake to avoid with your podcast is not balancing out the volume levels on multiple tracks. This one is more applicable if you're interviewing guests, so if there's more than one party involved. Now, you may be recording your interviews via Zoom, right? We all know how to use Zoom. It's almost 2022, and if you don't know how to use it, you've probably been living under a rock. And look, I don't diss Zoom. I really appreciate what it has done for this world. However, it's not the best video recording software for podcasts. And that's because the majority of the time, the audio is in one track. So if I am interviewing a guest, majority of the time they're going to have a different setup to me. So what that does is there's going to be an imbalance in volume levels, and there is a few ways to go around this. Now, if you have a podcast production team, an editor of some sort, they will already be on top of this. If you are doing this by yourself, or if you have a team member that is looking after this for the first time, or is it still in the learning stages, what you can do is, and this is a tedious process, especially if this is a very long podcast episode, is to manually trim when the person is speaking. So you may be in track 1, and then the guest is in track 2, and you have to manually drag them down. And then what you'll be able to do is adjust the output depending on what the decibel meter is reading. What I recommend as an alternative to Zoom is using Squadcast, using Zencaster, using StreamYard. The list goes on, but what they will do is they will optimize the audio to be clearer and crisper, but they'll also separate the tracks. It makes life so much easier. I'm pretty sure Zoom has that function, but there is a setting, I'm pretty sure, if you don't want to pay for a premium product like Zencaster or Squadcast or StreamYard. But I do recommend them because they do have this added functionality on how they can increase the quality without having too much, because I know Zoom has lag issues and if someone is speaking on top of the other, you don't hear any person. What's more important, without going into the semantics of the programs, is as long as you can split up everyone speaking onto different tracks, it will allow you to adjust the volume so it all balances out. And then the other alternative with that is something called Euphonic. Euphonic is a great tool. It's an AI-powered software, and it's a web app where you upload the audio recording and it will naturally balance things out. And I think they give you a free trial, or depending on how long it is how much you pay for. So that's the other one to look into as well. The third mistake that people make with having their podcasts is recording in spaces with too much noise. This is a big one, and that is because we live in a world where distractions are everywhere. When there is too much noise going on, what that does is it can take a lot of focus off the interview, especially if there's a dog barking in the background, there's a phone going off, there are birds chirping in the background outside. What we want to do is mitigate all that so that we can have a really smooth interview, really smooth process of speaking into a microphone, because then it becomes very distractible and it becomes very hard to put our attention back into it because our minds are elsewhere. So this is something that we just got to make sure that we do ahead of time. And some examples are turn your phone off. And if the room is quite echoey, try and be at least 6 inches from the microphone, because the further we are away, then there's more of a chance for the sound to dissipate and it can bounce off specific surfaces. If you have the resources to get any sort of foam to absorb the acoustics, I know carpet can work pretty well. And I know these are little things, but they do make a big difference. Now, I do have a bonus thing to avoid, and it's kind of putting everything I've said into one sheet. So one thing you can do is to be prepared by having a housekeeping sheet. This housekeeping sheet would be split up into before the recording, during the recording, and after the recording. Have this ready, send them to your guests if you're interviewing, send them to your team so they're aware. And these could be everything from making sure that, yes, do we have our mic? Is it plugged in? Is our software on? Just like the little basics. But what that does is it becomes habit. And what it does is it adds the professionalism, especially if you're speaking with someone. For me, I really like it when someone is prepared, they've done their research, they know what they're doing, they've done it before, this is not their first rodeo, and it makes me feel taken care of. And that's what you want to do for your guests so that it is a very smooth process. What I'll do is I will put a template, which will also be in the show notes, of a housekeeping sheet that you can use. This is free. I'm just doing it to help you, if anything. And this is so that you don't deal with any of the main mistakes people make. And in the show notes, I will also include the microphones I recommend if you don't have one, and it'll be based on different price points. What you can do to change the volume setting, and I'll also put in the link to Auphonic. So if you're looking to balance out your audio, you can put that in there too. And I should put as a disclaimer, I am not sponsored by them. Anyway, that is the end of this episode. Thank you for tuning in. It feels awesome to have done 20 episodes. That's about, 5 months worth. So I'm pretty stoked that I have kept my discipline around this and to share my insights and a lot of data around podcasting and how your company could streamline their process with their podcast, or maybe you're a subject matter expert, and that's what I'm here for. And if any of this resonated with you or someone that you can think of that will get a lot of value from this, please share it, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening, and for more information about Soundboard services, please check out the show notes. Lastly, Soundboard acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging.